Hello and welcome to the Best Life Code with Doctor Rudy. How are you?
I'm doing great, Vivek. How about you?
I am well as well. And today, Doctor Rudy, we are in January. January is Mental Health Awareness Month. So that's our focus for today's episode, mental health. And let's start with a question about, how you often talk about it, holistic health. That's your framework.
Right.
How does mental health tie into physical aspects of wellness like hormone optimization, inflammation reduction, or even nutrition? Let's start there.
Yeah. So it's very interesting, right? As mental health, I'm an internal medicine physician. And most of my colleagues, whether we do cardiology, gastroenterology, whatever parts of internal medicine or surgery, it feels like mental health is a separate part of medicine. Psychiatrists, psychologists are like a different side of medicine, and those two islands of medicine don't talk to each other. What a disgrace for Western medicine is that we've separated health into physical and mental health. We all have one health, holistic health, that includes physical, mental, and spiritual. So as a healer myself, I don't just consider myself a doctor. As a healer, I realize that I need to take care of my patient's mental health because I've developed a lot of expertise in fixing physical health. I've used GLP-1s like we've talked so much here, testosterone replacement, nutrition, exercise. All of this helps the physical body, and it's really important. But what is the use of having great health if you don't have good mental health? My specialty now, so I'm a longevity specialist, and my goal is to help my patients live as long as we can. And really, especially with the help of AI and personalized medicine, we are going to be able to extend life. But do you want to extend your life if you have poor mental health? That is something that is so important for me. And it's interesting that in my training, I received very little information about this. I remember very well, I had one class on psychological assessment. So you mean to tell me that I'm going to be a healer taking care of people, real people, and all we got trained on is physical health. Very important, but just half of the picture. So we talk a lot about this during January, but it's something we should talk about at all times. Mental health is important to overall health. We can't have holistic health, holistic wellness without mental health. So now the big question is, what is mental health and how can you optimize it? Because the same way I like to optimize physical health, I like to optimize mental health and have metrics that we can follow. Because when we think about mental health, you want to think about brain health. Although the brain is not the only thing that counts for your mental wellness or your mental position in life, brain health is very important. So when you do everything that I just said, things like exercise, good nutrition, maintaining a good weight, increasing your muscle mass, decreasing your body fat, exercising, moving, good sleep, your mental health tends to be better. And the link to this, it again, hormones and protein that our body secrete. And I'm going to say a big scientific term that I want everybody listening to start getting used to this. The protein called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. BDNF is basically fertilizer, miracle grow for brain cells. The higher your BDNF levels, the healthier your brain is. And how can we increase our BDNF levels? It's exactly everything that I said before. Exercise, especially high intensity type exercises, good eating, fasting, good sleep. The better your sleep, the deeper your sleep, the better your BDNF level, the better your brain health. Supplements that we can take, things like omega-3 fatty acids, fish oil, turmeric, magnesium. There are so many supplements that can help with brain health. And it's interesting, they've actually shown a functional MRI of a brain that when BDNF level is high, it induces neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity, and there's new connections in the brain that form, and that improves your mental capacity. So you want to think about the brain like a computer. And the new connections that you get in the brain, it's like adding memory to the hardware. So it's interesting, our brain is really as a quantum computer. So the more memory, the more connections you can have, the faster it can operate. So we want to increase our BDNF. We want to increase those connections, that neuroplasticity or neurogenesis, meaning formation of new nerve cells. The more we do this, the better our brain health, the better our mental health can be. So this is one part of mental health, the physical aspects of the brain. But now there's another side of mental health that is really our mindset. And I truly believe, like stoic philosophy, that we control our destiny. And if you look at the logo for our show, it's the Hermetic principle: as above, so below, as within, so without. And you have Marcus Aurelius who said that. And his statement, all of the Stoic philosophy, it's about controlling your mind. It's not what happens to you, it's how you react to what happens to you. So we have power over what happens to us. If yesterday was 80-year anniversary of Auschwitz camp, the Holocaust. And I'll never forget the book that I wrote on the Holocaust. I forgot his name. I think it's Eli Wiesel, but who said that he survived the Holocaust. All his family perished. He almost died, and he still found a way to keep hope. How can you find a reason for living when there's so much negativity going around you? And the Holocaust is an example that we can say that's once in a lifetime, we'll never see that again. But everybody has their own cross that they need to carry. And then you ask yourself, how can I go and be positive when all this is happening around your life? I'm from Haiti originally. The situation of my country is horrible. The gangs have completely dominated the country. They are kidnapping. They just kidnapped a friend of mine the other day. They shot a family member of mine last month. How do I maintain my positive attitude despite the negatives? If you're from Israel, if you're from Palestine, if you're from Africa, there's wars raging everywhere. There's so much negativity. How do you maintain your positive attitude despite it all? And this is again going to Marcus Aurelius, that says that we can control our emotions. It's not what happens to you. It's how you react to what happens to you. So for me, when I speak to my patient, I said, you have two things that you can do for mental health. Number one, let's optimize your brain health. Let's make sure that we increase your BDNF by all those measures that we talked about. That's the physical aspect. Number two, the mindset aspect of mental health. How do you go from victimhood to empowered, self-dedicated person, no matter what happens around you? So this is why, for me, I talk to my patients about resilience, about developing what I like to call a no matter what mindset, meaning that you develop equanimity. Equanimity means that your inner disposition does not depend on outside events. This is difficult, Vivek. This is, to me, the goal of every human, to learn how to not let the outside world infringe on your inner disposition. Hardest thing. I'm working on this. I'm not perfect whatsoever. I still have my down moments, but I'll still remember, and I've shared that on that podcast before, that my brother committed suicide 7 years ago. And that event was one of the hardest things I ever had to go with. But I look back at it 7 years later, it made me the resilient person that I am today. So I'm looking at all these events that happen, all the pain and suffering that I've had in my life. And I love this quote: pain is universal, suffering is optional. And I now decided I will no longer suffer. No matter how much pain is thrown at me, and I get that every day, I refuse to suffer. Because every night I go home and I connect to my inner world. I connect to my inner strength. And that inner world that we have is connected to the universe, connected to God. So for me as a human, once I realize that I'm way more than this physical appearance, I'm way more than this physical body. I am light. I am part light. So no matter what happens to my physical body, if I look at it from my light body, I can deal with it better.
Wow. It's
I kept you, I think it's the first time that you've been tongue-tied with me, Vivek. I love it.
Yeah, it was there's many things to unpack here, and I'm gonna start from a few things that came out of that. One is obviously you pointed out that in when you were in med school, there was no connection or no study to the other side of psychology or psychiatry. How do you think this gap is bridged now, or is it still we are not like they are still siloed in
It's
it?
still because unfortunately, Western medicine is very fractured, right? You have a specialist for your finger, a specialist for your elbow, a specialist for the shoulder, specialist for the brain, and none of them speak to each other. My type of medicine, functional medicine or holistic medicine, is trying to bridge that gap. So I see myself, that's why I describe myself as a healer, not just a doctor. I'm a healer of the whole body, and the whole body includes mental health. Unfortunately, I see the medical school curriculum has not changed. It's still, they're very separated, but I'm optimistic because I see the new generation. Gen Z is very particular about their mental health. They care about their mental health. So they, I think the new generation prioritizes their mental health way more than what my generation used to do. They don't want to work as much because they want to prioritize their mental health. There's a balance, like everything in life. Finding a way to maintain good mental health, good relationship, good inner dialogue, but at the same time, being able to function in a difficult world, succeed and push forward, that yin and yang of life, it's to me one of the hardest things. And I'm going to quote one of my favorite teachers, Abraham Hicks. And I love what she says. I believe in the duality of life, and Eastern thought thinks a lot about it. Western thought thinks to be more binary, either or, the duality of this world. Whereas Eastern thought thinks more that there's both sides. So the yin and the yang. So Abraham Hicks said something that really resonated with me. And she said the key of life is to find the balance between satisfaction and eagerness. Satisfaction, loving where you are right now. I'm enough right now. I am good and amazing right now. But at the same time, I'm eager to improve myself. I'm eager for my career to advance. I'm eager for things to look forward to. But finding that balance is difficult. If you're too satisfied, you're complacent. If you're too eager, you're anxious. So can you find that balance? And it's not either or. So the way I try to live my life, I remind myself every day that I'm amazing, that I am loved, that I have love around me, and that I'm enough right here, right now. At the same time I'm saying that, I say, but I want to achieve this much, and I'll push myself to this much. So finding that balance is what I want everybody listening to try to achieve. So you want to ask yourself, I love to say that, how satisfied are you with your life right now? And find a way to love your life no matter the circumstances, no matter what. And I won't take, some people say, I hear you, but listen to my story. My story, I'm allowed to feel sorry for myself. Think about the Holocaust. People survived this and still lived a good life. So I tell my patients and my friends, yes, you're allowed to feel sorry for yourself, but quickly bounce back. Because when you're in a mindset of feeling sorry, of victimhood, of scarcity, you only go further down. So we're humans. I'm human. When I have those moments happening to me, I have a moment of pain. I feel it, but I quickly bounce back so that I no longer suffer.
And you said this statement once again: pain is universal, suffering is optional. And as much as it's easier to say, there is still stigma attached to especially mental health in our society, and especially for men. How do you encourage your patients to prioritize or at least get to this mindset? Because uh, you will also hear one is like, people say like, I don't want to ignore my reality. I mean, that's the reality, right? So I
That's the
want to,
reality.
it's just, I don't want to just say stuff to just
Yeah.
put a blindfold over it, right? So what do you say that? How do you handle that?
Yeah, so, and that's very important because I don't want to minimize mental health. I don't want to say to everybody going through mental health issues, oh, you can do it, just think positive whatsoever. Again, my brother suffered from depression and ended up taking his life. So I don't take that serious. I don't take that lightly. Take that very seriously. And for some people, they may need antidepressants. They may need treatment. But the first thing you need to do, like I always say, self-awareness. Where are you in life? Have an honest inquiry, and then start changing the things you can change. If there's things that you can do to improve your brain health, everything I said, do those. But sometimes you're in such a bad place, in such darkness, that you can't find yourself to do this. That although some patients going through depression will tell me, they're like, I could write a book on how to get out of depression, but I can't right now because I'm too deep. I don't know if you've ever seen that commercial of an antidepressant on TV and you see the person walking. It's a little cartoon and there's a dark cloud and rain just on him. It's sunny everywhere, but it's just on him. That's what people with depression feel like. When it's a hormonal imbalance, a neurotransmitter imbalance, at this point, you cannot get yourself out of this. What we hope is with mindfulness meditation and all those things I said to increase BDNF that you can get yourself out. But if you do a self-inquiry and you see that you really need help, go see a professional. Talk therapy works a lot. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, very, very effective at relieving anxiety and depression. And, exercise, sleep, nutrition, stress management, the basics, we've talked about this. And if none of this works, always practice self-awareness, self-love, radical forgiveness. That's another big word, a big concept that I had to include in my life. And I had to forgive myself for not seeing my brother's diagnosis. That was a hard one for me because I kept blaming myself, but I had to let go. I had to let go. I had to forgive myself. And now I'm so easy to forgive. I may not forget, but I forgive very easy because when you don't forgive, who does it hurt? You. It only hurts you. It doesn't hurt the other person. So radical forgiveness is a big word for me. Self-awareness, self-love, and meaningful action. Once I see that, I'm like, what's one little action that I can take every day to try to better my situation? And if that includes having to do any kind of therapeutics to help you, it's good. And I'm going to tell you why I'm excited about today's world is that we have new novel therapeutics. Number one, we've always talked about psychedelics, and I've been very open about my use of psychedelics outside of the country after my brother's passing, because I needed something to help me deal with it. And I went to Mexico and I did a psychedelic session with a shaman, and that was the most important thing I've ever done in my life. Vivek, I did it and I saw and felt my brother. I'm a scientist. I cannot explain how that happened. I went from being agnostic after my psychedelic session. I became deeply spiritual because I saw that there is another world outside of that, and I'm part of it. My brother's part of it. His energy did not dissipate. When he died, his physical body died, but his light was still there. And that made me realize we're always going to be around. Our energy is always going to be there. This physical body, I'm experiencing a physical moment, but my energy will always be there. And it's truly transforming because a lot of depression, or what another teacher I had called cosmic discomfort, meaning people are questioning, what am I doing in this life? What is this all about? Why am I doing this? What's the purpose of life? That's when sometimes we all go through those moments. At some point in life, it's called the cosmic discomfort. Where's your place in the universe? And I'm going to tell you, having those deep moments of introspection, whether you get that by prayer, by meditation, by breath work, or in some cases by psychedelic use. Psychedelics is an entheogen, meaning that it brings you to God. It brings you to the unknown. And it did that for me. Again, I'm going to say here, I'm not recommending anybody to go and do something that's not FDA approved or legal, but this is just my story. And now we have medications that have been FDA approved. Ketamine, which is an anesthetic agent, has been FDA approved to treat anxiety and depression. And recently it was FDA approved for what is called treatment-resistant depression, meaning patients who are having mental health issues and have tried different medication and still cannot find relief. So now you can use the intranasal ketamine spray, and the results we're getting at our clinic are mind-blowing. Unintended. It really is truly transformative So when you do all of this stacking, so a lot of my patients dealing with mental health issues, we take one thing at a time. Let's improve your nutrition. Let's improve your exercise. Let's improve your sleep. Let's put you on the right hormone if needed. And let's put you on the right supplements. If none of this is working, let's consider alternative treatments that are FDA approved, like the intranasal ketamine spray. And another thing that I just got into, TMS, which is transcranial magnetic stimulation. This is a technology, a treatment plan that has been FDA approved for decades, FDA cleared for decades for things like major depressive disorder, anxiety, OCD. This thing works. It's basically a non-invasive treatment where we do little magnetic stimulation of the brain in a very specific area of the brain called the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. When you get some magnetic stimulation to that, it has been shown to increase BDNF, increase neuroplasticity, and patients get much better with their mental health. So we have options. We have tools now. So for me now, I look at myself as the functional medicine healer. I have tools, not only physical tools, I have mental tools that can really help my patients transcend their pain, transcend their cosmic discomfort, transcend their malaise in this life. So whether you have to use just nutrition, hormones, or you have to use antidepressants, or you have to use one of those non-pharmacologic treatments, find a provider, find a doctor, find a healer that can help you with this, because good mental health is what we deserve.
And neurofeedback and those treatments,
Yes.
are those also you recommend that? Because I've seen that now there are clinics, at least in New York, I saw they were for performance enhancement, which is for mental wellness, performance enhancement. So
Complete. So neurofeedback is almost a form of cognitive behavioral therapy. So they do a lot of this. And then now we're starting to understand the brain. You know, like I always heard that quote, even when I was before going to medical school, that we only understand 5% of the brain. I think it's even less than that. We can't even quantify because we don't know what we don't know. But we're starting to find out a lot about the brain. And what we notice, just like Nikola Tesla said, we are all energy. And our brain, our body is energy. So interesting that we're using now electric magnetic field to access the brain, to really stimulate the brain, to really help with that BDNF, to help with mental health disorders. So we're back to what Nikola Tesla said more than 200 years ago.
yeah, fascinating. And you think when we talk about, and this is obviously not something easily measurable, the mental wellness, and you mentioned about BDNF, so that levels you can probably measure it. But I'm seeing certain applications which are using AI to detect your physical motions. So when you type in, especially using those apps, it detects your anxiety levels because your typing speed is different from your breathing, and also doing your visual analysis. So those things are now doing like a cross check on the patient and asking more of like more of like a self-reported way, like how are you feeling? Are you feeling anxious? And and patients report it. And I want to give shout out to this app, which is actually company incubated in Switzerland. And they are entering into US market, and that's how I saw this app, and we started using it. I and my wife just see it, and we are actually very surprised by the use this app called EarKick, and they're almost like the sidekick for mental health, mental wellness, and so I thought that was a great use case of AI just to like understand overall wellness, like detecting things at daily level, because there is anxiety that you come today and then you can't have almost all the time anyone to talk to. So do you see any other applications similar to this that you have surfaced, that anything AI related or stuff that can be used more in a way like?
So, I go to a lot of the longevity conferences, a lot of the biohacking conferences, and there's always amazing wearables, gadgets. AI is revolutionizing this field. And every 6 months, there's something new. I didn't know about this app yet, but I've seen many different applications HRV, heart rate variability, that can give you feedback. Now we're monitoring our sleep. Yes, there are so many things. Now you can do, they're having functional MRIs to see which areas of your brain light up versus don't light up. So this is an interesting field that I think AI and personalized medicine is completely changing that. Because when I keep saying for patient to have self-awareness, sometimes it's difficult. It's easy to say. So if you can have some kind of an app that gives you a daily reminder that can check your heart rate or something and give you a feedback, you seem anxious, right? Take a breath. And you know what it takes sometimes to be back in the present? Taking 5 deep breaths. So I'm doing this now. I put my phone I put that every 3 hours. Every 3 hours, it sends me a little message. And no matter what I do, if I'm with patients, I wait. When I'm not with patients anymore, I take 2 to 3 minutes. I take deep breaths. I do my positive affirmations. And then everything goes down. If we were to measure cortisol level, heart rate variability, heart rate and all this, those things go down with breath work, presence. And you know me, I always have my 3 Gs that I talk about. So whenever I stop every 3 hours, I remind myself my 3 Gs. I live in grace, I live in gratitude, and I remain grounded. I do this, I do breath work with it, and everything opens up for me. So this is my thing. And I love to develop words that are my self-affirmation. Passion, purpose, love, fun, success, friends, family, connection, spirituality. So I like to say those words and I repeat those when I do my breath work. And each one of us have some words that will inspire you. Come up with those words. Be your own therapist. Because one thing I've realized, our inner dialogue is the most important determinant of our mental health. Do you know what the inner dialogue is, Vivek? It's you just thinking. As I'm saying that, you saying, what is he talking about? Oh my God, what are we eating tomorrow? Oh, I can't believe, Vivek, you didn't do this. All day long, we're thinking like this. And there's people who tend to have a more positive inner dialogue, almost innately. There's people who have a more negative inner dialogue and have a lot of what are called ruminations. You keep thinking about the same thing over and over and in a negative way, and that you are your worst critic. And it's all happening inside your mind. Some people will tell me they have 3, 4 voices, not they have split personalities, but it's like chaos inside their mind. How can you improve your inner dialogue? How can you could be nicer to yourself, more loving to yourself? Your relationship to yourself is the most important relationship you can ever have. Mind it, pay attention to it, and be loving to yourself.
I would also want to add, like, on my personal experience that for me, I don't believe in the concept of work-life balance. It's actually literally how it is, yin and yang, right? Like, I cannot do well professionally if I don't have this inner voice in calmness mode inside me, and that works together. I know that I'm going to have a bad day if my inner voice is just not calm, like it's giving me different thoughts, right? And that's a very big part of it. And this is what I try to explain to even in our family discussions, that it is the balance is what you define. Again, internally, first you have to define your balance. And it needs to be, if you feel that, yeah, this is bothering you, then it is bothering you. So address that. Only then you can make stride forward, right? So that's where it comes, like the inner voice thing, super important, because that really gives you the first signal of how you're feeling, right? Yeah. And you're not going to suppress it, because then it's not going to solve. So you need to really figure it out why you're feeling it. Yeah. And that's what I feel.
How incredible that the Stoic philosophy in the Roman era, they understood that inner voice, that relationship to yourself, your mind, that's the only thing you can control. So I love that you're saying that. And Vivek, you're pretty young. The younger you are, that you realize that inner voice, you need to pay attention to it, and you can help control it. Because I do believe that we are not the inner voice. We are the awareness that's behind it. We are not the thoughts in our head. The thoughts in our head is just our mind, and it's our ego. And it tends to be very, very critical, very judgmental. So we can, and that's what happens to a lot of people, all of us. we mistake that voice in our head that this is the essence of us. We are not our thoughts. We are the awareness that's behind our thoughts. And that awareness can look at those thoughts with love and redirect it to do better. And that's what you do when you wake up and you look at your inner voice, and then you're like, if you have a bad inner voice, you know it's going to be a bad day. It's true, because it makes up your reality. But what can you do to change that inner voice when you realize it's not positive? It's not helping you. It's actually hindering you.
Yeah, this is a great point. What role do habits like meditation and you also mentioned a lot about gratitude and mindfulness play in mental health? How can people incorporate in their busy life, right? It's easy to like
Yeah.
forget about all those things when you're busy doing everything. How do you incorporate? What's your recommendation there?
Well, I'm a typical example of this. I work 60 to 70 hours a week. I have a busy schedule. When I'm home from work, I'm either thinking about podcasts, I'm writing articles. So I have a busy life, and I have that very chaotic ego mind, that very chaotic monkey mind. They call it my inner voice, always talking. That's why for me, even sleep is difficult, because my inner voice is always on. So it's hard for me to disconnect. It's hard for me to do plain meditation. I do guided meditation and affirmation, but it is imperative that we take a little time to just disconnect from the doing, right? We're always doing something. How about just being? We are human beings, not human doing. We tend to just focus on the doing, on the performance, on the achievement. We don't focus on just the being. Our Western minds, whenever we have downtime, we call it downtime, unused time. You're wasting time. It's not. Actually, those moments where you're not doing anything, those are the most important moments. I'm struggling with this, to try to find those moments of not doing anything, being okay with this. And again, Eastern philosophy, in the Tao Te Ching, they call it the Wu Wei, the art of non-doing. And balancing doing with non-doing is, again, the duality of life. So Wu Wei to me is something that I'm trying to bring into my life, the art of non-doing, and not feeling guilty about non-doing, not feeling that I'm wasting time when I'm just with myself, in my presence, and taking care of it. Whether I'm doing something with my loved ones, but what I like to do now, spend moments in isolation. Before, I used to not like being alone. I always needed some kind of stimulation. I'm working on myself to be okay with just me, no matter what. And I want everybody listening to this to start doing those exercises, because no matter how much support you have in your family, I have a lovely wife, I have amazing kids, I have my family and great friends, great patients, but my most important relationship is myself. So I'm learning to spend more time with me and myself.
Yeah. And I also, on this point, I heard Naval Ravikant, who is like an angel investor and entrepreneur in Bay Area, and he had a very specific thing about productivity as well. And we have this tendency of blaming ourselves, like, oh, we got to work, we got to be productive, but that's not how it works, because we are not robots. Like we are almost like, and so his saying was, think yourself as human as lions, because you go for the kill, and that's when you're most productive, and that's how you do it. You're not a cow
And
who's
you
going to
rest.
graze. Yeah, you're not going to graze for like
Mhm.
8-10 hours continuously. Your productivity won't be like constant. That's not how it works. And to get to that level is only possible if you first accept that, and then you have this thing that, yeah, as your productivity will be higher, and not like have that downtime of not doing, which will actually help you do better when you're productive. So that's
Completely.
what you were saying, that the art of not doing is actually the time of your body's recouping and getting you at that stage or flow that you need to hit your best productivity, right? So
Complete. Yeah. And the corporate world is really looking a lot into this, because when you put those things into action, you can get into the flow state more. You're more creative. You do better. But think about our typical day as a worker in the Western world, in the world. It's stress nonstop. You have 20 things to do. Your to-do list is this long. When you don't do the to-do list, then you blame yourself, negative feelings. And every time you try to rest, you're like, I should not rest. I look at my long list. I'm trying to, again, the hardest thing to do. The hardest thing to do is to not do things. As an entrepreneur, as a scientist, as a business owner, as somebody who wants to save the world, the hardest thing is to learn to take time off. Take time just with you and yourself. It's a
I
tough
had
one, Vivek. It's a
yeah.
tough one,
Well,
man.
yeah, it is. It's the most difficult thing, especially. I think I've experienced now and lived in 3 different continents, privileged enough to do that. But also when I've seen so much drastic difference of, especially how we view our mental wellness. Like you go more east, it's almost viewed as if you are empty and sitting silent. That's an exercise, and that's okay. It's considered very much okay. But the same thing, you move more west, it's almost like again stigmatized to like, oh, you're being lazy or you're just
Yeah,
not doing anything, and
yeah,
that's a problem, right? Like because that's not the full. It's actually proven on the Eastern world that the happiness index is high overall, despite being poor,
yeah.
and uh, and still we are less happier in the Western side because of these things, and no
And
wonder.
interesting. And again, just like everything, it's a balance because now I don't want some young people to hear us and be like, oh, I just need to stay home and watch TV all day because this is
Yeah,
my self-care day. This is my art of non-doing. That's not what it is. Again, I heard that quote and I loved it. They said, it's a pregnant emptiness. It's an emptiness that's full of action. The art of non-doing doesn't mean just sitting down watching Netflix and not doing anything. It's a reconnection to your deep inner self that prepares you for more action. So that's the art of non-doing, that deep connection. And learning, again, the art of balance is everything. That duality, yin and yang, not too much of this, not too little. The Buddha called it the middle way. Not too much, not too little, just in the middle. But as human beings, we're not good at living in the middle. We're extremes, too much or too little. How can each one of us learn how to live more in the middle and practice more self-love, radical forgiveness, compassion, understanding for you first and for everybody around you?
you have spoken about connection as part of wellness framework too. And I think you spoke in one of our episodes that you intentionally spend times with your friend, and that helps you, especially in men's circle, that helps a lot. So, how important is social connection for mental wellness, or what advice do you have for fostering this meaningful relationship?
That's such an important part. And when you see the recent surveys, I think showed that 60% of Americans experience loneliness. Men even more. Men, as they grow older, they lose their friendships. Men tend to be very lonely. Women will get together, hold hands, talk about everything. Men tend not to have this. So I'm very, very big on maintaining and fostering relationships around me. So I'm developing my small group and growing a small group of friends like-minded, that we like to do things together. And I'm usually the one in my friends that I go deep with my questions. Some of my friends are like, here it goes again. We're going to have to share our feelings. Can't we just have a beer and watch the game? I'm like, we will. But tell me, how do you really feel, man? Because that's important. Having those relationships is one of the most important things. Actually, if you look at a lot of the studies that were done in the blue zones, what was really one of the really important determinants of longevity wasn't just the food you ate, the exercise you took. It was the deeply meaningful relationships that those people had. And again, they lived in small communities. They did a lot of things together. They had a lot of purpose of doing things together. That is so important. So anybody listening, reach out to a friend, send them a text, call them, be like, hey, long time no see. Let's go have lunch. Let's have a quick talk over the phone. Send them little messages. Foster your relationships because yes, we talked a lot about relationship to yourself, but now you need to open up that circle to your family, your friends, and don't just go superficial. Be the person. If your group, you don't have those deep relationships, be the one that brings that out. Ask questions. Don't just say, hey, what's up? How you doing? Just say, no, how are you really doing? And have those conversations. And especially as men, we're not good at this, but we can change.
Um, it's especially in men's circle, it's very superficial. It's like we just don't like to talk about those things. I still am like that too. Like, we don't go that deeper, but because my wife has a good, she's more matured in that level,
Right.
and she has taught me in a long, long way. Like, oh, you gotta express how you feel.
Good.
Now I do it a lot, but I remember that when we were dating, it took me several years to get the level of like, really, you want me to like express it? Like, it's
I
also
don't know how to do it.
something. Yeah, like we don't even do it. Like we don't talk like this in India or like how this is. And now you want me to like really say you like really? So that I make that joke with my wife a lot right now. Like, yeah, you have really helped me like be
Good.
very expressive in communication,
Good.
especially emotions, right? Like because
Good.
I wasn't that person like who would express these things at all. So that's
That's
very
crazy. And when you think about it, that tends to be, and we think about this type of deep connection as a more female energy. And women tend to have that more innately. And I think that's part of bearing children, having more oxytocin, more connection. Women have that more innately. Men tend to be more with a provider. We need to go and hunt. We need to go and do what we got to do. Let me do this. I don't need to take part in this part. Absolutely not. We need to take part of this. I'm so glad your wife is doing this to you, with you. And as each man who has that, bring that to your group of friends. Be the one that asks the deep question. They'll look at you weird, like my friends look at me weird in the beginning, but now they're used to that. So when we get our get-togethers, sometimes a lot of fun, watching the games, we're drinking beer, whatever it is. But I take the moment. So I'm like, okay, guys, let's have a deep connection or one-on-one. How's it going with your wife? How's it going with your daughter? How's your work going? How is that affecting you? And have those conversations. As men, we need to learn how to become better listeners, because sometimes even our wives talk to us and we're already thinking about what we need to do tomorrow. Becoming a better listener changed me as a physician, as a dad, as a husband, having more empathy, more compassion, all those things that you think more female energy. We need to bring that more into our life. I remain the guy who wants to succeed. I remain the guy who wants to really be on top of my field, but I'm rounding that and softening that with a lot more of that female energy.
on that note, we'll end our episode here. But today we went deep into our emotions, mental wellness, and I'm again very glad, Doctor, you shared many things here. Of course, your personal experiences and life too, which makes you so special with your authenticity that you express here on the Best Life Code and making sure everybody can live their best life. Thank you once again.
Thank you. And Vivek, I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for every listener. I'm grateful for this beautiful world that we live in. Despite all the negative that we see, you can control your thoughts. Be a stoic. Be like Marcus Aurelius. Know that your thoughts control your mind. As within, so without. Pain is universal, but suffering is optional. Find a place that you no longer suffer, no matter what happens to you. And on this, have a good one, Vivek.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a good one.